As promised, everyone, in studio, we have Mary Scherling, aunt of one of my team members, former realtor and flood queen of Fargo. Is that the proper term?
Oh my! Well, I don't know that I want that title, but we're I'm sure committed to helping this community solve their flood issues, and not just this community, but all the communities in Cass County. We've worked diligently over the past few years to provide flood protection, not only to Fargo, but to increasing West Fargo's flood protection, and then also within more of the rural areas of Cass County, Mapleton, Castleton. We've done tremendous work across the county. And all of those projects were funded by the half-cent sales tax that was voted in several years ago by county residents.
Well, Mary, we were chatting off air, and that you, of course, had a really great real estate career, and now you find yourself serving as a county commissioner, working very much with flood protection, with the diversion, and then you're, of course, working with the basin as well, as you were referring to, and then you're representing the entire United States for some things. You are a woman who has invested in giving back. And first off, I just want to say thank you, because that is a big deal, and it matters a lot. And then I want to say, are we at an impending doom for what's to come with this flood? Because the city just asked for 250,000 sandbags, and I think the anxiety level of people as the weather starts to warm up gets a little bit higher. Where are we at?
Well, thank you for that question. I believe total the city and the county are going to work together this year.
And that's new, correct?
Well, we've done it in the past on occasion, but we really have found after reevaluating both systems that it just works better. Citizens get confused as to where to go. Should they go to Sandbag Central or should they go to the county highway department? But total, we need 400,000 sandbags.
Oh my gosh.
The city of Fargo, and I don't want to speak too much for them, but they are in my county. They have done a tremendous amount of work, primarily through the diversion, in building up their permanent levee protection. But people will be surprised. They still need about 20 miles of temporary levees. And within the next few years, they're going to reduce that down to 15 miles. But because the diversion has to allow 37 feet of water flow through town, we still need to get those levees up there, but there's a huge demand for clay levees and sandbags in the city, in the county, especially further north along the Red and further south along the Red. We'll be putting up trap bags, and if you've been around here, you kind of see what that looks like. We'll be distributing sandbags to individual homeowners out in the rural areas. Every flood is different. We know we're going to have impacts in rural Cass County. We did last year. It maybe doesn't hit the news so much.
Are you expecting more overland flooding, or are we expecting flooding to come simply from the river increasing so much? Because I think it's important, and that's maybe a loaded question that we'll get to the answer of. Why are we expecting a flood this year? Let's talk about that first. What are the conditions that have impacted our area that have led to us saying, well, now we need 400,000 sandbags to start?
Well, we had a really wet year last year. The water is saturated into the ground right now. Last fall was really wet. We had a lot of snowpack. And what I think is probably the most interesting statistic when I look at the graphs that the engineers show me is that the Red River's flow last fall was the second highest it's ever been.
Oh, boy.
The only time it's ever been this high before, came close to it, was in 2008, the fall of 2008. Well,
and 2009 was a very big flood.
Exactly. So that being said, who knows? I mean, we've had a really dry February. If we have that perfect melt like we had last year, we may just go along our business and it'll be just a bump in the road. That being said, we have to prepare. If we don't prepare, what happens is this community shuts down for 2 solid weeks, and you have fire firefighters, screaming down the streets with sandbags. And we don't want to have to react that way. We want to have a planned, controlled response. We respond to the 10% probability. Tomorrow, we're going to get a new forecast out. So that will be interesting to see. Right now, those forecasts are based just on what we can see, what we can measure so far that's happened, and compare it to previous years. The floods that will be coming out, we'll be able to start to look into the future a little bit and see if there's any moisture coming our way. But it's so hard to know. But we'll be prepared.
Frankly, I don't remember the last time we had a significant snowfall. It was January sometime. And now we find ourselves with some 35-degree days. Are those important days for us to have, Mary?
Well, I'm no weatherman, but I'm told yes.
Okay.
They're very important to have.
Mostly for our morale. Yeah, let's not even talk the flood. Like, it just makes us feel a little bit better.
But those slow melts, when it warms up during the day and then it cools down at night, that's what you want. What you don't want to have is 40, 50-degree days. I know I've got relatives in the western part of North Dakota and Montana, and they're having 50-degree days. And if we had that all of a sudden and a rain, we could have some real problems.
So we want a slow, gradual increase with colder nights still in order to be ideal.
Absolutely.
Okay, so just something to watch for, especially March is kind of that month. I think, by the way, if you haven't gone to get flood insurance yet, please consider getting flood insurance. Talk with your insurance provider. It has a 30-day hold from the time in which you order it until it's impacted. And so that puts you at the end of March or early April. But I still think that that's worth doing. So I think one of the questions that's looming here, Mary, and we'll wrap with this, is with the diversion. And you obviously have been so involved with the diversion project. When, if ever, is it coming, and will it solve the current pains that we're dealing with to prep for this year's flood?
Absolutely. Well, the diversion is being built right now.
So shovels are in the ground. We don't see it necessarily in Fargo, but where does that happen?
That's happening. The Corps of Engineers is working on the inlet structure south of town, and that's going to be a really interesting project moving forward. It's a massive structure, and so they're working on that. They put out bids for the wild rice structure. And then the ditch itself, which will be hiring a private contractor to do the 30 miles that will be going, from Georgetown all the way circling south past Horace. That will start next year.
Okay.
We are in the process of purchasing the land necessary for that. There's 1,146 parcels, I believe, that need to be purchased.
Oh, boy.
And we've so far secured 350 of those. The rest are, in negotiations or getting appraisals done. So that will all be finished up this fall. Probably the most difficult part of it will be getting the flowage easements for the retention area. We still haven't landed on exactly what the conditions for that will be, but we're diligently working on that. So the project is moving along. I mean, it's very, very busy. And what we don't
see or hear much of it, but I think there's maybe an energy that says, I don't know if it's ever coming, and it's coming, right? When is the finish date when we can say?
Well, it'll be a 6.5 year build.
Okay, starting last year?
Starting next year.
Starting next year. Okay, so we're looking at 2027,
yeah,
2028.
So that's our big concern, is if we have a big multi-billion-dollar loss in this community in the meantime. So it's a race against time. So any of the delays, there's been lawsuits and any number of delays on this project, we could have had it built by now, which is really unfortunate. But here we are, we're moving forward, and it will be built. And as far as what impacts it will have, the areas up around Harwood, especially from the rural aspect, will be protected. That will be huge. We have many, many roads in Cass County that are overtopped during floods. It's really dangerous. And we want to make sure that we can take care of those. Now, unfortunately, there will be areas outside of the protected area that will still have to deal with some impacts when
Right.
it comes to flooding. You know, it's not just the Red River. There's the wild rice, the Cheyenne, the maple, the rush.
Of course.
And kindred will be something that we'll be keeping an eye on this spring. If the water from the Cheyenne gets really, really high, that's a threat to them. So we're continually looking at those areas around Cass County. If do we need to secure their levees better, and are there retention areas? And that's something that the Red River Basin Commission has looked at repeatedly, is where are the best places to put retention areas, and so that would just be another tool that we could use.
Well, Mary, I'm so thankful to have you in here. This is insightful and helpful, a little bit nerve-wracking, and yet let's just hope for that kind of weather that's going to make it okay for us. So Mary Scherling with the Cass County Commission, thank you for all you're doing. We really appreciate it. And folks, head to hatchrealty.com while we head to break. Take a look and see out what your home is worth. This is Real Estate Radio with Erik Hatch.